learning science. And then I've been kind of learning. That was sitting behind us.
Okay. Yeah, good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Business and Economic Development Committee. It's Monday, June 3rd. It is 6:39. Around the table, we have Councillor, Jakob Haga. We have Economic Director Ann Creek. We have Councillor Leonard, Councillor Fournier, Councillor Dean, Council Chair Pelletier, and myself, Sue Haas, is chairing this. Our first item, Director Creek, is our rental registry.
Yeah, we're very excited to present the pilot program for rental registry. Our community development officer is here this evening to present. Come sit.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, well, yes, so in your packets this week, we submitted to you a proposal for our rental registration pilot. This is actually, it has three components, so we have the actual registration process, the proposed registration process. And then secondly, a program that would work to address and really support the entire system of landlord and tenant relationships. And then we also submitted some information about resources that would be a good addition to being able to make sure that the program is successful. Our overall design is to develop a pilot that can serve as a learning opportunity about what the best practices are. Something that we did learn over the last 6 months of talking to landlords and tenants and trying to really get an understanding of how Bangor might implement this is that after reviewing, model after model in other municipalities, it's really difficult to sort of plunk one in, scratch out city name and put Bangor in, and it doesn't really work well. But what we did find valuable is that when we had folks around the table, they were really invested in gaining the opportunity to co-produce the plan with us. And they felt really that everything that we've been able to put in here has been to address the concerns, but also as a way for them to really kind of see that they've identified, certain potential benefits and consequences and things like that. So after our stakeholder meetings, we were able to put together the registration process so that this is a voluntary configuration. We suggest using the inspection procedures as again, it's a voluntary opt-in measure, but also its value as a point of education for property owners to understand in two different ways what the building maintenance standards should be for their buildings, and then also to have a tool in a checklist to go into their buildings and complete a checklist either by themselves or by one of our staff that can go in and help them identify different things, because some folks might not know what a junction box is versus something else. What are they looking at? So this is just one of the services that they're able to avail themselves of the staff. But it also gives us an understanding of the condition of their unit in a way that helps us arrive at the outcome that we want, is to, fix anything that is a problem. So once they are able to register and complete that checklist, a lot of times they'll see, that there are some things that they need to resolve. And so we come into the Quality Housing Provider Program, which is something that is intended to be a companion to the program, and it allows us to really assemble some resources for the tenants and the landlords themselves. So if they have a inspection or they do an inspection and they recognize that they have some deficiencies, we're able to offer them financing so they can get those things done. One of the real concerns from landlords were that they have units that might not be compliant because of zoning or other types of things that may be outside of the purview of a building maintenance issue itself. And so for some of those things, we really had to sit down and try to figure out, well, what would we do in, a few of these specific scenarios? So we came up with a couple of ways that we'd like to trial some solutions, such as using consent agreements, which allows the city to be able to recognize that a unit exists in a certain configuration. But outside of, health and safety items, we would allow that use to continue so that we're not displacing, tenants from the third unit, for example. We also, right now, we use development agreements often for rehabilitation and repairs that need to be done that could be, significant or that take a long time, or that there are many that need to be done. And one that is likely, we think likely to come up is the use of fire suppression systems. When you go from having a duplex to 3 units, you now have, certain requirements for sprinkler systems and fire barriers and that kind of thing. And those can be rather pricey. And they also could take some time because we only have 2 contractors in our area that are able to do certain types of things. So we want to be able to have enough flexibility to work with some of these property owners that could have rather complex projects to do. So a development agreement is one way that we can establish a specific timeline, but also be able to work with them on those projects. And then the other piece I think that's really critical is we've looked a lot at the tenant services portion of this, and that was really apparent in some of our earlier meetings, is that we found that there, just isn't enough of everything that we really would like to have. Oh, go figure. Like, we all know this, right? But we were really able to hone in on some ways that the city can, because we have so many city departments that are doing the same type of thing, that, kind of making sure that we have a really good analysis of where the gaps are in not just the way that we interact with landlords in our community, our public health and housing programs, but also working with our landlords in our code enforcement office, or our landlords in the landlord liaison program. How are the tenants, benefiting from some of those things, and what are the other services that they need? And what we really found is that often, if a landlord is not participating in one dedicated program or another, they're taking on a lot of case management duties. And so sometimes a tenant might be experiencing a very, very short-term problem. And that short-term problem is sort of the small crack that one could fall into if they're not otherwise eligible for a long-term service. And so having some dedicated resources for someone that has a short-term problem that can turn into an eviction or something like that could be a really great, valuable way to work together. So it's our goal to be able to work with all of the staff on this issue to make sure that we really identify some good key services for tenants. Let's see. And so also in your packet, I did give an outline of sort of where we're hoping to go with that. The supportive benefits and services to quality housing providers. We also have some examples of the good condition attestation and the rental property self-assessment program. And also, I wanted to just make sure that I explain a little bit about the affordable housing and why it's in here. It was a big portion of conversation with landlords who were hesitant to participate in any type of rental programs with the city out of some misunderstanding or concern that their rent would be regulated, to the point where they were sort of asking us, well, where would be the qualifications for certain funding sources and things like that. And so HUD allows us to define affordability for the CDBG program, which we generally do, as 80% of the area median income are sort of like the target audience of these funds. But we also have learned over the last 4 or 5 years, as housing has become a real critical issue, is that attainable housing is a really good standard to think about affordability. And when you're talking to landlords and you're listening to tenants, we all hear that they're using the cost burden standard without even realizing that they're doing it. When they ask a tenant that they need to make three times the amount of the rent, they're really using the cost burden standard, which is that your income is, you're not spending more than 30% of your income on your shelter. So this is one way that we were able to bridge the gap in a really difficult conversation when we're asking someone to sort of regulate themselves rather than having us to go and regulate them. So it was a good way for us to really have a good conversation about what is affordability, what is attainability in terms of housing costs. And we found that we agreed with each other. So that's why that's in here. And what we hope to do is to use these cost burden standards to incentivize the structure rather than to, impose regulations or fees or fines or things like that. So, with that being said, maybe, do you have any questions?
Do you have questions? Council Pelletier.
Thank you. My question is about the additional funding request of $250,000 to set aside for the program.
Yes,
If I look at the table,
yes.
the math isn't mathing. Okay,
Mhm.
what am I missing?
You're not missing a lot, because after this went to print, I was like, oh, that doesn't math.
This is not.
But it actually does, in the way that there just isn't a lot of money to go everywhere I would like to go. With creating a modest budget. So the first line item talks about those fire suppression systems, and they are probably the most costly item that we could anticipate spending money on.
So that's the one where I have questions,
Mhm.
because everything else, if you look down and multiply the cost by quantity, you're in the ballpark, but this says
Right.
35 to 50K times 10, that's
Right.
not 50,000.
It isn't, and it would be $500,000 if we
Right.
did it that way. So we would only, with this budget, I would hope to be able to do one project in that line, or, it really depends on what we're seeing in terms of, the needs specifically. But fire suppression systems for multifamily buildings that have low and moderate income people are an allowable expense under CDBG. So one could say that either we would be doing one project for a market rate apartment, or we would be doing like more than one and then less of some of the others.
Okay.
So while initially it was a mistake, it is also just a testament to the fact that they're just, there's not enough places to put some of these things. But honestly, those types of projects to do sprinkler systems are some of the best use of funds, because you do it once. You do it once and you spend $100 or $200 a year to inspect it and make sure that everything's great. you know, every 10 years, I think you replace some nozzles here and there, but it's an easy way, easy as in, rather not complex anyway, to make sure that a building is compliant and that those occupants are safe. But like I said, the price point is pretty high, for just one project. So if we could ensure that we're helping a property owner get one of those done for a middle market, building, that would be a huge win for the program.
Thank you.
Other questions? If not, they are looking for approval to go to full council.
I can move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to go to full council. I see no objections and onward it goes.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nice work, Robin.
Thanks.
So next we have the Grandview Avenue Development Project.
Check in, yeah. Council may recall, we've been looking at the city's property on Grandview Ave. It's an 11-acre lot for possible housing development. And we had heard some concerns from the neighborhood that's on the other side of the property. And, you know, we wanted to use this as an opportunity to sort of do what we should always do in development is, you know, have neighborhood meetings and, you know, engage the public in the development of the site. So we did a design charrette last week. We had it over at Husson, so it's a little closer to that neighborhood. And it was well attended. I was really happy with the attendance, and we were able to get some good common themes about, you know, shared green space and having a common building. I mean, they really kind of thought this out to sort of create almost a mini village. And again, you know, trying to get to that middle income housing, missing middle, we call it, you know, to be able to, you know, create sort of like a little neighborhood. So I was really pleased with that. There were some concerns about, you know, protection of Arctic Brook, because as you know, that does need protection. So, you know, any development that would occur there would have to be carefully designed to reduce the negative effects on that. And there were concerns about, you know, traffic impacts. As you know, that part of Broadway is very congested. The Starbucks that's going in is, you know, they're doing some traffic improvements at that intersection. You know, so we are making some improvements in that area, but, you know, it is a congested area. But I think, you know, at this point, we're waiting for the consultants to give us a report of their findings. And then we'll be back here to talk about next steps at that point.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else before we go into
No,
executive session?
just executive session items.
Okay, we won't be coming back after
Correct.
executive session. So, once we go into executive session, for those of you watching us, we will not be back on screen after that. So I do need a motion from someone to go into executive session.
I make a motion to move into executive session.
Hold on, gotta read it.
Which one?
This one, read the whole thing, please.
Okay, we will, I move into executive session for 1 MRSA 405-6C, disposition of real property or economic development. 3 items here.
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded, so we are in executive session.
We still
We had to roll call vote.
Now we do have to,
Mhm.
right. Are you all coming? Yeah, all of you?
Yeah.
Who's on the committee?
There's, well, myself and Joe, and then Dina and Susan said that they would sit in.
Okay.
You're welcome if you want to. Council Yakvar,
Yes.
Council Leonard,
Yes.
Council Fournier, you know, Council Dean,
Yes.
you coming?
I'm coming.
Council Pelletier, yes, and I'm a yes, so we are in executive session.
Right, thank you.